This last week, me and Steve have been watching a series of holiday episodes from television, from various shows that we like to watch, such as Holiday Nights from the new Batman Adventures, Christmas with the Joker from Batman the Animated Series, Comfort and Joy from Justice League, Have Yourself a Morlock Little Christmas on X-Men the Animated Series, the X-Files episode, How the Ghost Stole Christmas, and from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Amends, Last Christmas and A Christmas Carol from Doctor Who, of course, and a very special Christmas from Supernatural. We're going to talk today a little bit about those episodes and what they said to us specifically, and some unique themes that we saw running through them. Why don't you take us through the first one there, Steve?
Okay. One of the weird things that I kind of found looking through some of these episodes was how much they really delve into horror specifically, and because we write horror comics, I found that was an interesting connection. But if you think about it, it really does kind of make sense, because there are pagan elements to Christmas and how it evolved, and how it kind of became the holiday. And that was one thing, looking at a very supernatural Christmas particularly, that stood out, because they actually kind of talk a little bit about that. And they worked that into their Monster of the Week for that, which was basically a story where they kind of start off thinking that it's Krampus, and then it turns out that, in fact, they're dealing with a couple of pagan gods, that are killing people ritually. So
Pagan gods acting like Ozzy and Harriet, no less.
Yes. I really just absolutely love the contrast between that. They seem like this 1950s old couple, and then it turns out that these people are just ritually murdering people so that they can maintain their power and stay alive. But this is the kind of thing that is kind of surprising, but you can kind of see where the associations come from. And also with the X-Files episode, The Ghost Who Stole Christmas, which is pretty much a haunted house story, except that it's much more psychological horror and things like this. So the fact that that we're dealing with a holiday that's generally about cheer and family and appreciating what you have, and then it turns out that there are a lot darker elements of it, that I found that quite interesting.
Well, there is that element of balance to it. While it is about joy and cheer and all that for some people, it's a very depressing time of year. That's a nice backdoor for horror right there. Not and not just the pagan elements of it, but if you also consider, like, for instance, in that X-Files episode there, how the ghost stole Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
You had you had the ghosts in there, taunting them, based upon basic pop psychology of the moment.
Yeah, and I think that Ed Asner and Lily Tomlin just absolutely perfectly nailed that. And what's really kind of interesting is it does speak perfectly to, like, the way that Mulder and Scully kind of look at the world. There is a certain amount of truth bombs that kind of hit with pop psychology, but it gets them to, I think, appreciate each other more, and also to kind of appreciate the time they spend with each other more. So in a way, it's almost like the horror leads more to the holiday cheer towards the end, as they learn and grow.
I could see that. I do appreciate the those aspects of things that allow for horror to just sneak in the back there.
Yeah, yeah. And the beauty really of it is like, you can have a good show that jumps from one tone for 1 minute to another tone the other minute, as long as it's on a reasonable storyline. And I think that episode really did it well. And I think also with Supernatural, because while, yeah, it is a story about, killing Ozzy and Harriet, basically, it's also really about the brothers and kind of getting over some of their childhood issues, particularly Sam, because he really didn't have, or at least he didn't think he had a very good childhood when it came to Christmas. But then the story is about going through those flashbacks and realizing that, yeah, his brother did look out for him. You know, his father may have abandoned him, but his brother was always there. Dean was always there for him. And so, you know, I think towards the end, Sam kind of realizes, okay, I can give back this one night of the year.
Right. He did kind of. They both kind of gave in a little bit to give that to each other at the end of that episode.
Yeah, and that's usually the way good supernatural stories tend to work. You know, Dean kind of represent a little bit of one extreme, Sam's a little bit on the other extreme, but they kind of negotiate with each other and find a balance.
Totally. I found a very common theme in the episodes that I watched. One of them being that from an adult's perspective, most of the Christmas experience seems to be about reliving their childhood in either doing traditions that they did as a child, or even through their children's joy through the holidays there.
There's certainly quite a lot of that in the episodes I watch as well. Certainly, I think the Supernatural episode does that. The X-Men episode does that. So yeah, I would say definitely there's an element of childishness, and particularly with some of the characters. Wally West in the Justice League episode has a childlike spirit. So does the 11th Doctor. So you know, those kinds of characters connect really well to the holiday spirit.
Yeah, the 11th Doctor really had he really made the fun seem real because of his personality.
Yeah, he's pretty much always constantly like trying to find the joy in things and like the novelty in the universe, and I think that his mania in a way is almost infectious, and it comes across, and so you see how the characters around him are affected by his antics, basically.
Yeah, I liked in Comfort and Joy, the Justice League episode there. You know, everybody else is going off to do their holiday traditions. They're, you know, like Clark's going home to do Christmas at home and everything, and Wally's going off to go give presents to the kids or whatnot. John Jones, the first thing he wanted to do was go play in the snow, because that's what reminded him of when he was a boy.
Yeah, Jon Stewart, not John Jones, just to make it clear to the audience.
My bad. Yeah. And how he got Hot Girl to play along with him there. There was they both got to enjoy that kind of that childish moment there, that nostalgic point.
Yeah, and I think even when Hot Girl takes Jon Stewart over to the alien bar, there's still that element of childish joy. I think the difference is I think what they were trying to aim for was like showing the different worlds that they come from, but also what they have in common, even if the rituals are different. And because of that, you kind of see the two bonding more.
Totally. And you see that same element of reliving their childhood in what Wally did there too. He spent his Christmas trying to get that toy, the duck. What was that duck's name? I don't remember.
It was the rapping duck. And
yes,
it was kind of a cringy commercial with him, but you know, you can sort of see how like kids that age would be attracted to that. And I kind of liked at first I kind of thought that this was going to be something along the lines of Jingle All the Way, where Wally's like going around the world looking for basically this last toy. But I kind of like what they did instead, which is, okay, he finds it, but then he has to repair it. And to do that, he needs the help of the Ultra Humanite. and they kind of get into a little bit of a scuffle, but ultimately they come together in friendship. And I thought that that was something that kind of fit the Christmas spirit quite well.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how I felt about the ending with that though. I mean, while the kids got the toy they wanted, uh,
Mm-hmm.
the Ultra Humanite basically changed it so that it wasn't what they wanted after that. It
Well, it
just
basically gave him his voice.
right. It was well. It didn't even do the fart sounds or the dancing or the slogans anymore. It was just the Ultra Humanite reading the Christmas story.
Basically. But I was kind of thinking that, the idea is it's not necessarily what you want is not necessarily what you end up getting, but you can still appreciate it for what it is. And I'm kind of thinking that's maybe what Paul Dini was thinking when he did that.
Oh, hey, that's a good point. I hadn't considered that before.
Mhm. So yeah, always there are kind of like these little messages that are sprinkled with Christmas Story, but the way that they do it, they never kind of bludgeon you with it. It's always one of those things that you kind of look into the narrative and you kind of see it.
Totally, and I think the prime example from Comfort and Joy on that reliving childhood experiences would have to be Clark.
Yes.
that guy, that guy did. I mean, some people do things that are nostalgic. Clark just full on went to little kid.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's like, well, I mean, when you're talking about Superman, it's like he's so tightly controlled all the time because he has to be. He has all of this power and he's always trying not to hurt anybody with it. But if it's kind of like when he goes home, he doesn't. He's free of the expectations of being Superman. He's free of the fear that comes with being Superman because the only people that are around are like his cat Streaky and Ma and Pa Kent. Um, and who else is there? Well, John Jones. And he can't really hurt John, so he doesn't. He's free to be more the person that can play around and all of that. And it's like almost like he's overcompensating a little bit because he is so controlled most of the time.
I don't know. I think he took it a little farther than that. He was clearly wanting others to play along with him as well. The
Yeah,
Mod
especially John.
Ken we're talking about, we used to have to wrap the packages in lead there. And he says, "You mean Santa wrapped those packages?"
Yeah.
And then as John Jones is going around the house there, they see Clark there, look like just like a little kid at they'll get up in the middle of the night and go to the Christmas tree and pull out the presents, and they'll shake them and look at them and try and figure out
Mhm.
what's there.
Yeah.
And his
So
parents are still apparently packing his presents in lead.
I mean, well, that's what you kind of guess what you have to do when you have a kid who can see through lead. I mean, or everything but lead.
Yeah, but I don't know. I would hope my child once they reach Superman's age
Yeah.
that maybe they could control themselves from looking in the presents.
But but yeah, I mean, it's still at the core. I think it's very much a small town farm boy sort of life, and I think that he kind of misses that because he spends so much of his life in the big city. So this is kind of his way of acting out.
Right? It's definitely his cut and loose time.
Yeah, and he's entitled to it. He's Superman.
For sure. For sure. So what was your second theme?
Now this one, I would say, is probably not going to surprise a whole lot of people, but I think given the episodes we watched, that definitely kind of plays in. And the idea is redemption. The idea that, yeah, people have bad things in their past. They may have been in the naughty list for whatever reason, but in the end, there's always the hope that someone can change, be a better person, or even just embrace the spirit of Christmas more. Uh, One of the probably the biggest example is with Amends from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where they're focusing on Angel, who had just come back from a hell dimension after Buffy had sent him there in the excellent season 2, and
Well,
and
you go to hell.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, sometimes you got to save the world. I love the world more than I love you. I'm sorry, but in the end, that he comes back, and he's very he's dealing with a lot of post-traumatic stress because of what he experienced in hell, and he's not yet become the angel from the TV show or series yet. So this is season 3, and this is like before he goes off to LA and starts the angel investigations and all of this. But I think this is the episode that kind of leads him down that path, because he is being confronted by the first evil, with all of the things that he had done to people, the terrible ways that he manipulated and killed them, the fact that he did it with a song in his heart, as he would have said. But in the end, he still has a soul, and he can still make a choice. And Buffy's love actually helps bring him from the brink. He's almost ready to kill himself at one point.
Is that why that the supernatural story of when Dean came back from hell and Sam kind of led him back, why that was so meaningful for you there? Was that Buffy episode?
Not consciously, but I think it kind of maybe hit some of the same notes. I don't know why. I really like redemption stories for some reason. And just because the idea that you can start off in a bad place, but that's never where you end up necessarily. There's hope for everybody, no matter how far down you go. And I would say that's definitely something that Amends focuses on a lot. But it's also something that A Christmas Carol does as well.
Very well, yes.
Because you're dealing with this guy who is basically kind of an Ebenezer Scrooge type character. But I think that the difference with him and Scrooge is that he's driven the way he is because he was abused as a child by his father. And so the episode really sort of deals with him kind of getting over his own selfishness, his own desire to protect himself from pain, basically, and actually kind of, remembering, why he used to care about people when he was a young boy. And I think that probably the most notable moment from that episode is when the 11th Doctor goes to the old version of, shall we say, not Scrooge, and basically, and not Scrooge is like, well, I know I'm going to die alone. What can you show me in my future that's so terrible? And then it turns out, well, no, that's not what he meant at all. And in fact, the younger version of not Scrooge, the little boy, walks out of the TARDIS, and he sees what his older self has become. And he realizes at that moment, oh my God, I've turned into my dad.
Right.
I grow up and I turn up to my dad.
So terrible, yeah.
And then it's kind of that moment that leads him to fully change and decide to help the Doctor save this crashed space liner that has 4,000 people in it and is trying to land safely. So, in the end, even though he may have wasted his life on his own selfishness, it's not too late for him. He can help people. It's not. He could still be a productive, good member of society.
Yeah, that was a very I don't know, it was a very meaningful episode for me. I often, even as a kid, as I'm sure most people do, you wonder what you'll be like as an adult. And as an adult, you wonder, what your child self would think of you. And I don't know, that episode really, I don't know, I guess it touched me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very touching episode, and honestly, that's one of my favorite of the Christmas specials, just because of that reason. I feel like, and it's not just that it uses like a classic story as a template, but also the fact that it really hits those emotional moments with the twists, with the way that the characters are a little bit different, and just the Doctor being the Doctor. And particularly the 11th Doctor, who I think really has that festive charm.
He does. He does. I related to the doctor in that a little bit, as well as the boy. But the doctor, because growing up, I was particularly awkward in that sense, where I was often saying something that seemed really profound or meaningful to me, and most people just didn't get it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably go through that, especially those like that are kind of growing up a little socially awkward. But I love the 11th Doctor, mainly because it's like he thinks he's the coolest guy in the room. He thinks that he's every bit as cool as David Tennant, and in fact he's not. And he can do things that are weird or cringy or eccentric. And he just embraces it with gusto. Like he just jumps right into it enthusiastically, even though it is bizarre, some of the stuff that he does. And that's one of the real things that really kind of sets his Doctor apart.
I did think it was a little odd that he was like, I'm just going to go ahead and stick my arm down the mouth of this shark.
Yeah. Well, it's like, well, we have 3 tries.
Yep.
I was like, oh my God. Only Matt Smith's Doctor. He's trying to reassure this kid at the same time that he's trying to talk himself into doing something dangerous and foolish. It's really, really great.
I don't know about you, but the rest of that screwdriver looked very far in the back of that shark.
Yeah, I think you probably would have had to have put his head like right in the middle of that in order to see it. That would have been
I couldn't have done that. No.
No, I don't think I would have either.
But that's why we're not the Doctor.
Yeah. Well, never cruel or cowardly. That's the Doctor.
That's right. So my second theme is about something that even happened to me this year. I don't normally have people to spend holidays with, and I had some friends invite me along to spend the holidays with them, and that really put me into the holiday spirit. And so watching those themes play out in these shows that we watched had a special meaning to me this year. I was particularly touched by an aspect of Christmas with the Joker that hadn't actually really hit me before, and that was the Batman was dragging him around from place to place to the city, just looking for something. Somewhere bad has to happen, right? And I mean, he ended up getting his wish. He got the Joker.
Yeah. I mean, Batman is the guy who kind of goes around looking for things to go wrong, and invariably they do, because it's Gotham.
Right. But I like that. I mean, anybody who's been reading Batman for a long time knows that he struggles with the futility of his mission.
Mm-hmm.
That he can fight against it, and it may or may not amount to a whole lot. But that Dick was trying to get him into the holiday spirit with getting him to watch It's a Wonderful Life. Because it was about how much a man can affect a whole city. And I don't know, like, I guess in my heart I'm thinking, man, Bruce really needed to hear that.
I don't think Bruce kind of realizes how much of a difference that he makes to the people in the city, whether it's as Batman or as Bruce Wayne doing charitable things. But I think the one thing that I always really like about Batman kind of as a cast is that, Batman to me is more interesting when he has his Bat family around him, because then you start seeing a little bit more of the human side of Bruce Wayne. And I think that this episode particularly showed that, because Dick Grayson is being Dick Grayson and saying, hey, do we have to spend our lives obsessed fighting crime? Can we have like one day out where we can just be a family and like enjoy the holidays? And Batman's like, no, I want to go out and fight crime.
Right, he was ready to pounce on that guy for trying to return that what was it, that lady's purse or a present or something that she dropped. He was all so. He's like, I know it, he's gonna do it. He was all ready to pounce.
Yeah, and I think also in a sense it's like we get the villains we deserve, and that's kind of a line that I kind of remember from um, uh, a special feature on New Frontier. But I think it applies to Batman here because ultimately you have two people that are not capable, or at least not on the surface anyway, capable of having a normal holiday because they're always doing the things that they're doing. And with Batman, it's like I have to look for a crime to solve. And with Joker, it's like, okay, it's boring. I have to start crimes, in order to make things lively around here.
You know what I noticed was I watched Holiday Nights with the new Batman Adventures after I watched Christmas with the Joker,
Yes.
and after when you watch them in that order, suddenly you're like, you know what, Dick, Batman was right. Stuff is gonna happen.
Yeah. And it does when you least expect it. And it's all like the one day that he decides to be Bruce Wayne. Yeah, that's when Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy decide to try to basically mind control him so they can have him write all their checks for all the stuff that they want.
I almost felt like Holiday Nights was like if Christmas with the Joker was Dick's side of the story.
Yeah. I
Holiday
mean,
Nights is Batman's side of the story.
I would say that they both kind of have valid points of view here, because you don't want to get like so obsessed that you're kind of losing touch with who you are. But at the same time, there's such a thing as being too complacent, and Batman can't really afford to be too complacent, just because his focus always has to be keeping the city safe. It's not about him. It's about making sure nobody dies on his watch.
And that's a big responsibility because Gotham is one nutty place.
Oh yes, an entire rogues gallery full of weird nut jobs
I
that he always
like
has to keep behind bars.
I liked Fishburne in Batman versus Superman. Crime wave in Gotham. In other news, water wet.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And you kind of see that in Holiday Nights quite a bit, not just with the main feature, but with the backup feature with Clayface and Barbara having to step in for Batman because he wasn't
Right.
there.
So the other part that I noticed with this, including those who might not be getting into the holiday spirit in themselves, was actually done in a kind of subtle way in the How the Ghost Stole Christmas episode in X-Files.
Hmm.
I think I'm not sure the average person watching this might have picked up on all the subtleties between Dana and Mulder in that particular episode, but Dana went out in the middle of the night to a house in the middle of nowhere because Mulder was there on Christmas.
Yeah.
And as she said, the halls were decked, and she had traditions to do, and that's what she wanted to get to. But she still, even though it was the ghost that technically stole her keys.
Yeah. And I like the way they make you think that it was Mulder who did it at first, because it does sound like something Mulder would have done.
Right? Just to get her to go along with it for a minute.
Yeah, yeah. But in the end, you sort of see that they their experiences kind of show like how their relationship has grown, and kind of make each other sort of realize that in the end what they have is each other, and that they'll go to the wall for each other even above like other priorities that they have. And you really kind of get the sense that even though Scully is a somebody who always is trying to like find the skeptical answer for everything, she does have a certain faith in Mulder that kind of transcends rationality. I mean, following somebody to a haunted house on Christmas Eve when you've got like a family that's kind of expecting you to show up with gifts. Yeah, that kind of shows how like, yeah, she has this commitment to her job and to Mulder, even though she might pretend otherwise.
I speaking of commitment, I I particularly appreciated her her long rational speech about how there's no reason to be scared of ghosts and ghosts can't possibly exist and there's nothing to be afraid of and this is all just ridiculous. Science has proven blah 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 blah. And it's all just this effort to try and convince herself that she's not afraid.
I just like the whole moment where like she's clearly scared and Mulder calls her out on this. Oh, well, you're obviously afraid, right? And she said, yes, but it's an irrational fear. I mean, that is so Scully. That is so Scully.
Yes, yes. I just that episode was a lot of fun, and it had elements of the supernatural in it, right? But it had some elements of horror in it. Like when they realized that it was their bodies that they found under the floorboard.
I was looking at that and I'm like, okay, what is going on here? Is this like a time travel thing? Is this a weird illusion thing? What is this? And they eventually do explain it, but I like that the way they make you keep guessing the whole way through.
Yes, that was a very fun episode. But I think the point I would like to end on is that this Christmas, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, like I said this year, you need to find somebody out there that you see maybe needs a little help with the Christmas spirit, that maybe doesn't have anybody out there for them to spend Christmas with, and involve them in what you're doing, or maybe just go hang out with them for a little bit.
Yeah, I would say that definitely shows in the X-Files episode. Also in the X-Men episode, because you sort of see that Wolverine is like being extremely grumpy and going out of his way not to celebrate Christmas. And that's definitely something that they kind of took from the comics and kind of pushed out there. But much like
I love that Rogue called him Grumpus.
Yeah. And I like how Jubilee is like, no, you're going to have a fun Christmas. You're going to like it, darn it. And she just kind of keeps pushing him. And eventually he does soften a little bit, but it is one of those things where Wolverine is one of those guys that always sort of plays it tough, but deep down he values his family with the X-Men, and in this episode I think kind of really brought that up.
Very true, very true. I love that they finally, like, Wolverine was particularly hard in that episode. He was being a little bit more grumpy than normal. And yeah. I like that they just kept trying, and it eventually softened up. You can learn from that even those that are trying to say they're not, I don't want to be a part of this, and I don't like it at all. Keep trying. They eventually soften.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it also is with that episode is really just like sort of accepting people in your life that you don't necessarily expect to. And I think that's the case with the Morlocks. I think also with Comfort and Joy with the Ultra Human Knight and the Flash, but I think it came across a little bit better with the X-Men episode. Because you have the Morlocks who are, an underground society of mutants. And they kind of look like at first that, okay, they go and rob this ambulance, but you find that there's a reason behind it. And they're trying to save a friend of theirs. And this kind of brings everybody together in the end. The idea that, they value life, both the Morlocks and the X-Men, and that they have shared beliefs for all their differences.
It was a great episode. A little sad.
It got very close. There. It got very close. Yeah.
Watching Jubilee hold the little girl there while she was crying, well, do you believe in miracles? That was kind of sad.
Well, and then when it actually came.
Yes. But then when it actually came, that was good. I liked that episode a lot.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of question the logic and you sort of wonder how it would work, but you really don't care because the emotional moment pays off. And you sort of you want this to happen, especially in a Christmas episode. You don't want to have something ending in tragedy. So you kind of make a certain license for Christmas miracles.
You got to make a license for miracles during Christmas, if no other time during the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a time of miracles.
Right? So, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate that. And I want to say Merry Christmas to you guys from Omen Comics.
Yeah. Merry Christmas to all our Omenauts, and have a happy holidays.